This is alginate now. I'm going to use a little alginate to make the model because alginate will give me a perfect impression. Okay, so we took an alginate impression of the inner socket with all the dummies and models on it. So they're going to make an exact duplicate of it to make the outer frame. Now that the alginate is cooled, we're going to just wiggle it right out of this mold, see if it comes out. There we go. Oh, beautiful. Now, see anything left on there? Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Now, if you look inside this thing, you can see every detail. So we're going to fill this with plaster now, and we'll have an exact model of that socket with all the parts built into it so that we can create the frame. Okay, now I'm going to fill this negative up.
No.
Now, when that cures, we'll cut away the alginate, and that'll render a perfect duplicate of that flexible socket. It'll render a perfect duplicate of this configuration with all the build-ups in place and everything for the channels for the wires, the dummies for the electric switches, the blocks for the batteries, the valve, and the only thing we have to add onto that model is a connection for where we're going to attach the wrist unit and change that into the shape that will accept the wrist unit, and we'll do that in plaster, and we'll make the frame, which then will theoretically fit exactly over this inner socket. So now you can see all the details of that model, exact as it was. So we have an exact model of the outer dimension of the inner socket. So we're going to clean this up. In fact, you'll see little pimples over here. Those are little air pockets. We'll just clean them off. You can see the channels already built in, all the channels for the wiring, the build-ups for the switches, the blocking for the batteries, the valve where it sits. Okay, so now we'll modify this, create the round dimension for the coupling for the hand, and we can now make the frame. The model is now prepared for the frame manufacturing. The frame we're going to make out of a clear copolyester type material, so the whole prosthetic socket and frame will be clear. So you can view all the hardware and wiring and batteries right through the system. And then at the end everything gets covered with a skin which gives it the color of the body. So this is a block that's built from one of the batteries. These are channels for the myoelectric switches. That's a build-up that the switch is going to sit inside of. This is a little block. Can you see this angle here? This is a build-up for the charger. There's going to be a port built into the socket for the charger over here. This is the hardware that's going to hold the wrist unit on. On this side, a second battery. The build-up for a second battery, the second switch, and a little channel for the wire that's going to go down into the hand. Now we're going to heat up this thermoplastic to about 340 degrees and vacuum form it on the model. Hopefully we'll have a successful one because this model has to be destroyed to demold it. You see now we've got it drooping to about the distance that we want, so that it's going to conform to the shape of the prosthetic socket. And this plastic is now at a temperature of about 340 degrees. You can actually see it's continuing to sag. Alright, so now we're going to take it out of the oven, flip it over, and hopefully we'll be successful with the vacuum forming.
I used to like it now. This is my favorite.
Shut up.
Circle. You gotta press a little bit.
You'll see right through the cast. You can see through the plastic, and you can get an idea what the roll thickness is in the socket frame. Now we're going to let this sit on the model over the weekend. Let it cure on the model so it doesn't reduce at all. Thermoplastics all shrink when they cool, so if we leave it on the model throughout the weekend, it'll settle much better. Because all these parts have to fit into the inner socket. I'll show you. This is the inner socket. Okay. This is the inner socket. Fits in like this. Okay. So that's going to fit inside. This is the external frame. This is the inner socket. The inner socket is made of silicone polyethylene, a very soft, flexible, comfortable material. So this is the frame portion, which is going to be the rigid part that supports the inner socket. The next step is cutting off an assembly. Now you can see all the build-ups. You can see the build-up for the battery, the build-up for the switches. This is the build-up for the charger, which is going to be drilled out and assembled later. And you see all the little holes that we drilled in this coupler, and that's going to keep the plastic from twisting on the coupler. Yeah, pulled in.
You're pulling. You can't feel it.
Yeah.